If the Islamic Republic attacks, even without causing casualties, Israel will attack Iran. Reuters, citing Iranian officials, has said that only a ceasefire in Gaza could delay the Islamic Republic's response. Despair is premature in Iran with the work of Masoud Pezeshkian. The government, which was pursuing national unity, is retreating under pressure from the authorities. The resumption of advanced American bomb sales to Saudi Arabia after 3 years, according to Wall Street Journal, indicates that the Biden administration is seeking to gain Riyadh's cooperation on Middle Eastern issues. Additionally, the FBI has begun investigating foreign governments' efforts to interfere in the United States elections following attempts by Islamic Republic hackers to infiltrate the emails of Trump's associates. From the Iran International Studio, this is 24 with Farzad. Greetings and good day to Iran international viewers in Iran and around the world. Israeli media say that in recent days, Israel has sent messages to the United States and several European countries, stating that any direct attack by the Islamic Republic will lead to an Israeli attack on Iranian soil, even if the potential attack does not cause any casualties in Israel. At the same time, Reuters, citing 3 Iranian officials, has reported that only a ceasefire in Gaza could delay the Islamic Republic's response to the killing of Ismail Haniyeh. A senior Iranian security official told this news agency that if ceasefire negotiations fail, or the Iranian government believes that Israel is delaying the negotiations, Tehran and its allies such as Hezbollah will directly attack Israel. My colleagues Arash Alay from the U.S. Congress and Babak Essegi from Tel Aviv are with us. I'll start with Babak. This is almost a new approach we're hearing, that regardless of whether a potential attack by Iran causes casualties or not, Israel will respond by attacking Iranian soil.
Night has fallen in Israel, and the day of Tisha B'Av, one of Israel's days of mourning observed by believers, has come to an end. This day is significant for many people in Israel as it commemorates the destruction of the first and second temples in Jerusalem. Many, though perhaps not all, believe that the Islamic Republic would start its attacks on Israel along with Hezbollah from last night. But as we know, this has not happened. Whether it is due to pressure from the United States, the military presence of the United States in the region, Israel's warnings, or the Islamic Republic's strategy of waiting, the fact remains that 2 weeks after the killing of Ismail Haniyeh, the head and political bureau chief of Hamas, people in Israel, Lebanon, and Iran are still anticipating an event that could potentially escalate into a full-scale war in the region. The anticipation and anxiety are palpable among the citizens, and the government is on high alert. Today, for the first time in months, 2 rockets were launched from the Gaza Strip into Israel, indicating that Hamas is still active. The situation remains tense, and the international community is closely monitoring the developments in the region. The geopolitical implications of such an event are profound, and the stakes are incredibly high for all parties involved. It has the capability and capabilities to launch missiles even towards Tel Aviv. 2 missiles that landed in the sea did not reach the coast of Israel. In contrast, in northern Israel, the army targeted another car in southern Lebanon, killing 2 members of Hezbollah, making them the 409th and 410th members killed in southern Lebanon. In response, Hezbollah in Lebanon also launched several missiles towards Israel. Additionally, the Israeli army says it is completely and fully prepared to counter attacks from Hezbollah and the Islamic Republic of Iran, but advises the residents of the city of Wadnan to continue their normal lives as there are no new orders. Furthermore, the Israeli defense minister says that they are closely and carefully monitoring both Beirut and Tehran and have plans not only for defense but also for attack. Meanwhile, in the United States, they are closely following the situation, especially in Congress.
This is from the Reuters report you mentioned earlier on. That Reuters report says that diplomatic efforts are currently ongoing. The Islamic Republic and its allies of countries such as United States of America, USA, France, Germany, and Europe, along with UK, and now we are hearing mentions of other countries like Turkey too. Jeff Flake, who is serving as U.S. ambassador to Turkey, told Reuters news agency that they also seem involved in some way. It seems from this detailed Reuters report itself that both type and intensity level of any potential attack being negotiated upon carefully. Is it so? Is Islamic Republic looking forward towards normalizing? Idea it can respond militarily wherever. Thinks has international permission? And European plus American nations saying otherwise. Well, this limit, anything beyond, isn't possible. Additionally, a few hours ago, only U.S. media reported Secretary of State Antony Blinken's trip. Middle East canceled abruptly. Mr. Antony supposed traveled last night, but latest news his trip been called off citing security reasons because intelligence agencies unsure if war will start there before he lands. Additionally, the White House reported that two senior advisors, Mr. Amos Hochstein, who has been negotiating with Hezbollah for a long time, has left Beirut, and Mr. Brett McGurk, who has also been negotiating indirectly with the Islamic Republic for a long time, has left for Cairo. The Biden administration's diplomatic efforts continue in order to maintain control, the implications of a potential attack by the Islamic Republic on Israel, however, seem to be unfolding tomorrow. Over the past 24 years, based on the discussions I've had with various experts, it appears that U.S. intelligence agencies have seen enough evidence in the past 24 hours to conclude that the Islamic Republic will carry out this attack, probably through satellites, satellite images, repositioning some missile launch systems, and launching drones by the Islamic Republic. This is likely why 24 hours ago, an order was given to a U.S. aircraft carrier group to quickly move the Abraham Lincoln carrier group to the region before anything happens, currently in the U.S. Congress. During the questioning, the criticism of the Biden administration is that sending a few drones and some aircraft to the region does not change the situation. This is a fundamental strategic problem of the Biden administration because it has been appeasing the Islamic Republic for a long time, and now it feels that if the Islamic Republic shows some military reaction, the U.S. will not respond during an election year.
Thank you, Arash Shalay and Babak Astagi, for being with us. Thanks. While the Islamic Republic has announced that its lack of response to the killing of Hania in Tehran is conditional on a ceasefire in Gaza, Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Israeli Minister of National Security, stated during a visit to a mosque that Israel should not go to peace negotiations in Doha and should destroy Hamas on the battlefield.
I don't want to say we are in line to buy 9. We must win this war. Israel must win. We should not go to peace negotiations in Doha or Cairo. Instead, we must defeat the enemy. We must bring them to their knees. My message is this: we can defeat Hamas and bring them to their knees.
Aman Galriz, an international affairs analyst and lecturer at The Hague University, and Murtiza Faramand, a Middle East affairs analyst from Istanbul, are with us. Mr. Galriz, there is now a rumor that if a ceasefire agreement is reached, the Islamic Republic might hold off on a potential attack on Israel. How likely do you think it is that, if even a relative agreement is reached between the two sides, the ceasefire will hold?
Greetings to you, Mr. Farahzad, and all the viewers. I am pleased to be with you. In my opinion, there is no change in Khamenei's and the IRGC's equations. Specifically, Khamenei must make such a political decision, just like the previous time when there was an attack on Israel on April 13th. This time, too, there will be no change in Khamenei's final decision. Khamenei is compelled to make this political decision. Certainly, the United States and European countries have created an opportunity to conduct these negotiations. But in the final analysis, this event will happen. Remember, there is a good reason for him to carry out the attack, regardless of its form, which is another discussion. Even with the warning in your report, Israel has issued a warning today. The Israeli army has published this warning, which the Times of Israel has reflected. The reason goes back to Mr. Farahzad that in recent years, every time the Islamic Republic has attacked, whether it was the 2019 attack on Saudi Aramco, the 2020 response to the Soleimani assassination with the attack on Ain al-Assad, or the attack this past January, in practice, the attack on Tower 22 in Syrian territory, which was in Jordan, where 3 American soldiers were killed, and the attack on Israel in April. In all these instances, the United States has not shown the resolve that the Islamic Republic imagined it would to react. And this indeed makes me think that Khamenei will take this risk. If the gap between the statement issued by American officials, implying that an attack by the Islamic Republic should not have a significant impact or cause many casualties, and the reaction from Israel, which indicates that they will respond to any attack, is not filled by the United States, and if the U.S. does not clearly convey to the Islamic Republic that they will strongly confront any Israeli reaction, I believe Khamenei will indeed make this political decision.
Mr. Farahzad, what will Hezbollah's role be here? Many people are suggesting that if a war breaks out, if there is a reaction, it might come simultaneously from Iran and Lebanon, or even that Hezbollah might start first. This is one of the strong possibilities that this attack on Israel by Iran might not be direct and might not come from within Iran.
By its allies, namely Hezbollah, which itself indicates that this attack is intended to be controlled and not directly bring very serious consequences to Iran itself. However, I think Iran will wait, meaning it will wait until the issue of the ceasefire is resolved itself. The best thing that could happen with Iran is a ceasefire. If a ceasefire happens, it is promised that Iran will refrain from attacking. The difference between this potential attack and the attacks mentioned by Mr. Galraz is that this time it appears to be something that cannot potentially be controlled through an agreement. The Israelis have clearly and unequivocally stated that if an attack comes from Iran or any of its allies or proxies, they will not respond as they did last time with a reciprocal tit-for-tat approach. Instead, they will respond again and will not allow Iran to receive a response from Israel in return for their actions. This could create confusion when an Israeli attack occurs, adding more problems to Iran's already troubled market situation. Additionally, a new potential future military strike could target critical military installations or industrial infrastructure facilities, which would further strain Iran's fragile economy. As a result, in my opinion, regardless of the positions being taken, Iran's effort is to prevent this attack from happening. They are currently waiting to see if achievements like a ceasefire are reached so that they do not resort to an attack. Neither Iran nor Hezbollah wants this. None of them want to incur more costs. Mr. Saddam mentioned that Hezbollah has lost 409 people, which is unprecedented in all the wars Hezbollah has participated in. They have never had this many casualties. Consequently, Hezbollah does not want the war to become more widespread, and the people of Lebanon do not want this either, and there is no capacity for it. However, if the exchange of attacks between Iran and Israel continues, the outbreak of a war that extends to Lebanon and directly involves Hezbollah and affects Lebanon's electricity will be inevitable.
Mr. Galraz, this situation between land and air, which has been unclear for over 2 weeks, will the Islamic Republic finally attack today, tomorrow, or next week? If they do attack, which side will benefit or suffer?
At present, this is to the detriment of the Islamic Republic and can be said to be in favor of peace in the region. Of course, It has had its economic impacts on Israel's economy, negative impacts. And these impacts will continue. The atmosphere is quite tense. But in my opinion, as I mentioned to you, it is inevitable that Khamenei will make this political decision. You may recall that the same commander Hajizada, who can be described as a criminal figure responsible for the massacre of people in our country, had an interview with Basij students at Aryamir University 3 years ago in November 2021. In that interview, he stated that, in the decision we made to attack al-Assad during Trump's era, we knew that Trump had said if an American soldier was killed, we would attack 55 points, including Khamenei's residence. He concluded that we knew if this happened, about 15,000 innocent Iranians might be killed, and Iran would be set back 20 years. This was the reason why they shot down the Ukrainian plane with 2 missiles and also attacked al-Assad. This attack and the explanations I provided about other attacks they carried out, specifically even killing American soldiers in Tower 22 on the Jordan border, went without reaction. The Islamic Republic, being an ideological system, and Khamenei himself, the leader of the Islamic Republic, sees himself as condemned to show this reaction, and this reaction cannot be limited to a ceasefire in Gaza, because then he would have to respond to subsequent Israeli attacks and must create some form of deterrence. Moreover, he has promised that there will be blood vengeance and that they will definitely react, and he cannot go back on his word, not because he is a person who keeps his promises, but because he has to manage an ideological system in this way and not lose his social base. The news that Mr. Farahman mentioned in the media about the efforts of some, like Pezeshkian, to succeed in stopping these attacks or not directly targeting Israel, in my opinion, is more of a media play, because the major figures do not even have the authority to use their senior advisors in these decisions, and thus they are not the decisive and determining personalities in these decision-making processes.
Mr. Farahman, now if, as it is being prayed, the fate of the peace negotiations between Israel and Hamas is tied to a potential reaction from Iran, considering the approach we have seen from Mr. Netanyahu so far, how likely do you see it that an agreement will be signed with Hamas in the coming days?
I should point out that exactly the issue Mr. Gar has mentioned is that the matter of Khamenei's decision itself is a reason that military confrontation is not Iran's first choice and is not something that Iran seeks or pursues. That is, at that time, in order to avoid a major military confrontation, they were even willing to sacrifice Iranian citizens, and this itself is a reason that they do not want to engage in large-scale military confrontations, whether with Israel or directly with the United States, unless there is no other choice. For example, when there was an attack on Iran's air defense and Iran could not give a decisive response, this was not good for Iran's image. However, Iran must respond and show a personal strike so that its prestige and dignity are not diminished in the region. On the other hand, there are also hopeful signs that a ceasefire might take place. One thing is that the intensity and severity of the current military situation have reached a point where all parties with influence, both Western and regional, have mobilized all their available resources to bring the parties to the negotiating table and somehow implement this ceasefire agreement. The issue of the United States is that it is currently in a time constraint, and it is very important for President Biden's administration to have a significant achievement and a decisive move towards peace in this intense situation. The pressure and weight of the United States are extremely significant here. On the other hand, the issue of hostages is the most important of all issues. If Mr. Netanyahu remembers, therefore, even if they level the ground and eliminate every single member of Hamas, but end up with a number of hostages' bodies. It will still be a failure for Mr. Netanyahu. Right now, for the people of Israel, the issue of the hostages is the top priority. More than anything, they want these hostages to return to their country safe and alive. The fact that a military operation has been carried out with all these costs and human tragedies, and in the end, they receive bodies, will certainly be a significant blow to Mr. Netanyahu and will not be easily overlooked. Therefore, ensuring that the hostages are returned alive and safe is a crucial factor that favors reaching peace negotiations and a ceasefire. This means the ground is prepared. On the other hand, Israel, with these significant attacks it has carried out, including the assassination of Haniyeh, is in a stronger position to enter ceasefire negotiations compared to previous times, when they did not reach a conclusion. Therefore, there are hopeful signs that a ceasefire will take place. And if a major fire occurs, I think Iran will reconsider attacking Israel, although Mr. Khamenei has issued bloodthirsty statements. Such statements have been made repeatedly. Iran and Israel have been in conflict in Syria for over 10 years now, with many IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, members being killed in Syria. The same happened in the recent war, but no significant actions have been taken in response. This is the situation. It will depend a lot on the timing, and maybe now they will announce something in the future as a precondition, but I think a ceasefire will rule out a direct response from Iran to Israel. Thank you both, Morteza Faramand, Middle East analyst, and Damuni Galriz, International Affairs analyst and university lecturer.
While we are talking, there is currently a Pentagon press conference happening in Washington, D.C., and journalists are asking Patrick Ryder, the Pentagon spokesperson, about the potential reaction of the United States and Israel to a possible attack by Iran. Mr. Ryder, in the past moments, in response to a question from one of the reporters who asked whether the United States would directly confront Iran in the event of a potential attack by Tehran on Israel, said that he does not want to get into hypothetical situations, but that the United States support for Israel is as ironclad as ever. You are watching footage from the press conference of Patrick Ryder and the Pentagon spokesperson in Washington.
3 photos. An Iranian. China must also be part of this decision. What are your thoughts on this decision? What are your thoughts on this decision? What are your thoughts on this decision, perhaps?
With the continued negative reactions to the proposed cabinet of Masoud Pezeshkian, many analysts say that many of his voters have become disillusioned with the performance of the new government in Iran. According to them, the composition of Mr. Pezeshkian's proposed cabinet indicates that his election promises regarding economic reforms and foreign policy seem unattainable. Moreover, this approach to dealing with tensions with Israel indicates that the new government will not deviate from the previous administration's policies on the international stage. Alireza Nambar Hajigi, a political analyst from Toronto, seems very surprised. However, if we consider Mr. Pezeshkian's statements during the debates and what we heard from him before he was elected, some might say that what we are seeing now is not very surprising. Some might say that what we are seeing now is not very surprising.
Greetings to you and the esteemed viewers. There was a slight difference in some of the major selections from the true message of what Mr. Kodai Pezeshkian said. I will be the third government and the expectations that the voters had. However, what is not yet clear are the details of what happened that led to these selections. The interest in the work group that he had determined himself in some cases. The 5th, 4th, for example, the 3rd position in the oil sector was someone with a background in intelligence, compared to the first person, Mr. Ali-Nejat, who is very capable in executing projects, or even Mr. Imad Hosseini, who is also a prominent figure in the oil sector. The 3rd person was chosen, which was Mr. Arf's choice, along with Mr. Pezeshkian. Naturally, in other cases, There are similar issues. Some of this was not in the workgroup list. And what is important is that Mr. Pezeshkian, in a negotiation, and Mr. Arf, meeting Mr. Pezeshkian and Arf, in an exchange of views or a deal, changed some of the major selections. Some of the major selections are very good, like Mr. Hematai and Mr. Sali. And some, like Mr. Maidari and Mr. Zafar Bandi, who are very popular ministers or doctors, are very good, but it is clear that Mr. Khamenei has specifically told them, and they have accepted, including the Minister of Information, Mr. Adi Abadi, and Mr. Assami in the nuclear project, who had a very professional role in the negotiations with the agency and the destruction. Therefore, from this appearance, if you look, the expectations of the voters were not met in the Ministry of Interior and Education. Naturally, the criticisms are directed at the ministry, and we have to see what concessions have been made in return for this shortcoming. That is, can the new minister stop the violence against women and the social confrontations by the police or not? It is important to see how much the results matter. Do the selection of his deputies play a role? They had a very rough start, from the inauguration ceremony, which began with the assassination of Ismail Haniyeh, to the current situation of selecting cabinet members. It is not a very exciting start for a new president. One of the bad lucks, just like the fortune of Mr. Pezeshkian, who was elected due to the death of Mr. Raisi, was a moment of repetition. Here, there is a combination of bad luck due to Mr. Ismail Haniyeh, which has created a crisis that could now lead to conflict. If it leads to conflict, the entire government of Mr. Pezeshkian is in a situation for which it was not built. The Pezeshkian government was built for understanding and interaction, not for conflict. Secondly, there is disappointment because part of the cabinet composition did not meet expectations and demands. Thirdly, despite the working group that Mr. Pezeshkian himself had created and the promises he had made, and the letters he had written to universities to introduce individuals, the election of the working group was not considered in many cases. Now we have to see if, strategically, any concessions have been made. The concessions that Mr. Pezeshkian receives are in 4 areas: preventing an attack if Iran is involved in a conflict with Israel. As I said, many of the issues regarding interaction with the past, regional issues, and nuclear issues. This is one point. Secondly, regarding violence. The policies against women's optional hijab are social policies enforced by the police force. These 2 to 3 sections are about filtering. The 4th is about economic issues, and the 5th is about medical issues. In these 5 areas, we need to see what strategic advantages Mr. Pezeshkian has gained and whether he can succeed in doing something or not. Naturally, success in any of these areas will impact the others, but the most important area is the report on foreign policy, and if Iran wants to continue its past policy and get involved or even not agree, it will definitely have a negative impact in all areas. Thank you, Malerza Nanmar, a political analyst from Toronto, Canada.
The Wall Street Journal says Washington has decided to ease the arms sales restrictions to Saudi Arabia that were imposed 3 years ago. With this decision, Biden paves the way for shipments of bombs worth over $750 million to Saudi Arabia in the coming months. The arms shipments will include 300 small-diameter bombs GBU-39 and 7,500 Paveway-4 bombs. The Wall Street Journal says Riyadh will gain the capability to conduct precise airstrikes with American-made fighter jets that the Saudi Air Force possesses. With these guided bombs, the Wall Street Journal reports that the Biden administration is drafting a defense treaty with Riyadh and has discussed plans to assist Saudi Arabia in achieving nuclear energy. This report says U.S. government hopes better ties with Saudi Arabia will also help advance the truce in Gaza and normalize Riyadh's ties with Israel. Joe Biden 3 years ago to prevent civilian casualties in Saudi Arabia's attacks against militants in Yemen. Behnam Ben Tailblue, a defense and security analyst at the Washington Institute, and Hassan Hashemian, an Arab world analyst, both from Washington, D.C., are with us. Mr. Tailblue, what does the arrival of these weapons in Saudi Arabia mean on the ground? How much can it change the balance of power in the region?
Well, it is very important because Saudi Arabia has a very large air force compared to other air forces in the region, and similar to Israel, Saudi Arabia relies on its air force for military strength. Therefore, it is crucial for Saudi Arabia to acquire the necessary weapon systems to ensure its offensive and defensive air capabilities. In recent years, between 2019 and 2020, several major contracts were signed to purchase SDB bombs, which are bombs with low yield and limited explosive power, but significant capability due to their high penetration into targets and very high accuracy because of their limited explosive power. They are very useful in urban areas, causing less damage to the surroundings and reducing the risk of civilian casualties. Especially after the start of the Yemen war, Saudi Arabia purchased these bombs from the United States to use them in urban areas. Additionally, the Paveway 4 bombs, which are guided bombs, can be guided both by laser and by satellite or GPS with very high accuracy to destroy their targets. They are larger, weighing around 250 pounds, with 50 pounds being their explosive weight. The Paveway 4 bombs weigh 250 kilograms, and Saudi Arabia's F-15 and Eurofighter jets can use them against various targets. This can significantly enhance Saudi Arabia's offensive capabilities, especially under the current conditions where Saudi Arabia has assured the United States that these bombs will not be used in Yemen. Additionally, Saudi Arabia has improved its methods for selecting and targeting ground objectives compared to previous years, which had faced criticism. They have assured the United States that military targets will be chosen and destroyed with greater precision and care.
Hassan Hashemian, why so late? Now, with almost only 3 months, practically left before the elections, what concessions can the current Biden administration get from Riyadh in this short remaining time?
Look, this is a request that has been raised along with 2 other demands from the Saudis, and in my opinion, this project is becoming very comprehensive. That is the issue of arms, sanctions, and acquiring new weapons along with a defense security treaty that is supposed to be signed in Washington, as well as the nuclear program. Now among the Saudis, there is hope that they won't even need the next administration, for example, Mr. Trump, to come and do these things for them, because the Biden administration has taken very extensive steps to do this and has strongly recommended these options. Therefore, now they can very easily do this with the Biden administration, and their option is to conclude this matter with the Biden administration. This restriction that existed and has now been lifted is a prelude to completing the other 2 aspects of these agreements, namely signing a security pact with the Saudis and also the peaceful nuclear program. Of course, the Saudis, to reach this conclusion. And considering that at the beginning of Biden's term, he had a very anti-Saudi policy due to the Yemen war and the killing of Jamal Khashoggi, managed to reach agreements with other countries as well. They expanded the diversity of their weapons and extended their market. For example, they signed a contract with France to buy Rafale, a contract with Germany for Eurofighter, and also with China and Russia, and even Turkey. They have also obtained many different types of weapons from Turkey, and therefore considering that Saudi Arabia is the fifth largest arms purchaser in the world, according to a report by the Center for Peace and Security Studies. This situation has actually come about in such a way that they have disciplined their market and created a context where the United States does not dominate this market.
Mr. Nadamy, if a potential confrontation with Iran were to occur, it is clear that a large part of this front would be the skies over Jordan, and possibly Saudi Arabia, maybe even parts of Syria and Iraq. Many questions have been raised about the potential level of support from Saudi Arabia for the United States and Israel in the event of such a confrontation. How much do you think this new agreement might be related to such an event?
Well, in the end, it can't be completely unrelated. Of course, the connection, as it is in the South, is more about major issues, like the military pact. That is being discussed between Saudi Arabia and the United States, as well as the normalization of relations between Saudi Arabia and Israel. But to a lesser extent, in response to Iran's aggressive actions against Israel, yes, there is confidence that Saudi Arabia will keep more fighter jets, patrolling and surveilling the skies. And in that case, these aircraft will be equipped with air-to-air missiles that can target Iranian cruise missiles and drones if they attempt to use parts of Saudi airspace. Defensive missiles were not part of these past restrictions, and Saudi Arabia has continued to receive air-to-air missiles from the United States. However, it can be expected that intelligence cooperation between Saudi Arabia and the United States Central Command, which now includes Israel in its area of responsibility, will expand and radar information will be exchanged. This is especially relevant if Saudi Arabia's radars, due to their location, detect Iranian missile launches or drone flights.
Thank you, Fardad Farahzad, defense analyst, Washington, and Hassan Hashemian, Arab World analyst, for being with us. According to CNN, the FBI, which is investigating the hacking of Trump campaign documents, has said that hackers affiliated with the Islamic Republic have likely hacked the personal email account of Roger Stone, a Republican strategist and close associate of Mr. Trump. The Washington Post also wrote that the FBI informed the Biden-Harris campaign last month about being targeted by Iranian hackers. According to reports, Biden-Harris campaign staff have been targeted with phishing emails. The U.S. Department of State has also stated that it will use all tools at its disposal to hold Iran accountable for interfering in the elections.
In this image, we have Iranian cyber actors in this image, who are in this image.
We have expressed our concerns about the efforts of Iranian cyber actors to influence elections around the world, including in the United States. Iran's recent efforts to interfere in the U.S. elections are nothing new and, from our perspective, have been weakening democracies or attempting to do so for years. Any activity by the Iranian regime to interfere and influence the elections is malicious and destabilizing. We have tools at our disposal to hold the Islamic Republic accountable, and we will certainly not hesitate to use them unilaterally and multilaterally through institutions like the G7.
But.
Omid Mamarian, a journalist and political analyst from Detroit, told us, Mr. Mamarian, I think that hacking election campaigns is actually relatively easier for hackers. Isn't it? Because, for example, the conditions are not like the security of the CIA or the FBI or U.S. military officials, which have multiple layers of security. It is possible that a few young people are working on a campaign with Jim West for advertising purposes, and access to them can provide a lot of information to a hostile government.
That's exactly right. And that's why the FBI in the United States has opened a national security-related case with a high security level in this regard, considering that all these attacks were carried out through phishing. In fact, this means they send an email that recipients believe is from someone they know, and by clicking on the link provided, they give access to their communications to that individual. As you mentioned, it is very simple for them to gain access to the email collection and the files and documents within that group and use them. Indeed, it is a significant threat. Actually, it is a very serious issue in this regard. Necessary recommendations have been made to both Mr. Trump's campaign and Ms. Harris's campaign concerning cybersecurity issues, noting that various actors will attempt in the coming months, similar to the year 2016, like the year 2020, They aim to gain access to various campaign documents and by publishing this information, create chaos and unrest and exacerbate divisions and polarization. This is what security and intelligence officials are observing, and it is a new reality for the campaigns. They must ensure that their cybersecurity is well maintained.
And in terms of food, the US is relatively limited, isn't it? Because, for example, it's not like in the UK where they can extradite someone. If they are in Iran, beyond sanctions, what else can they really do?
Look, as you well know, the issue of election security and the internal affairs of the United States is an important matter for US security and intelligence agencies. The interventions by the Islamic Republic and the mischief they engage in to influence the internal environment of the United States, create chaos, and foster unrest, aim to polarize the atmosphere, and strengthen social and political divides. These actions, similar to what Russia did in 2016, will not go unnoticed by US intelligence and security officials, as well as political leaders. The United States is undoubtedly far more powerful than the Islamic Republic in the cyber domain, with significant capabilities to inflict damage or respond and show the Islamic Republic that entering such a field can lead to serious problems. They will not tolerate such attacks, depending on the type of attacks carried out, and the investigations conducted by the FBI. The Islamic Republic can expect the United States to react in this area. Therefore, it is not the case that officials of the Islamic Republic can think that through such mischief, they can create significant problems within the United States. But there have been no consequences for them so far, as the U.S. House of Representatives is set to begin investigations into this matter. They have requested that information related to these attacks be declassified so that they can discuss and review it openly. At that point, the public and the media will be informed about the extent and ultimate impact of Iran's interference. This will make it much easier to implement punitive measures against Iran. From this perspective, it seems that we are in a different situation now. Thank you, Omid Memarian, journalist and political analyst from Detroit, for being with us.
There is 1 minute left until the end of the program. In this remaining time, let me show you live images. What you are seeing now is, of course, the United Nations headquarters in New York, where a session on the situation in the Middle East is taking place. And now, you are seeing live images from the Pentagon, where Patrick Ryder, the Pentagon spokesperson, is answering a series of questions related to the tensions in the Middle East. He said that our focus is on reducing tensions in the region, and according to him, it is important not to look at individual regional conflicts, but rather at the broader regional conflict, expanded by Iran. We conclude the program with these live images from the Pentagon and the United Nations.
We are studying correctly.
The world does not sleep with us. At any moment of the day or night, and in every corner of the world, millions of news events are happening. Sunrise is the time for awareness. Start your morning with Iran International's Morning News.